In this lesson, we'll talk about how we can take advantage of global and exclusive links inside of RealFlow. Okay, so this scene file that I have set up, this is lesson 07 start. And again, just a very, very simple scene, a couple of emitters placed in here, a simple plane and a simple cube. Again, these both came from our primitives list. And as well, we have a bit of gravity as well as a volume daemon. So all things that we've already looked at in some of our previous lessons. Now, maybe just to make this a little bit easier to see, I'll go ahead and take something like this volume daemon as well as our gravity and make both of these hidden, so that way it just becomes a little bit easier to see. So by default, anything that we create within RealFlow really influences everything. So as we start to come in and play this back, if we were to take maybe these two emitters, and I'll come up to my node and maybe just start by giving these a little bit different colors, so that way these become hopefully a little bit easier to actually see. So let's maybe give one kind of a nice bright red, maybe the other one a nice bright bluish green. Press the A key on my keyboard to simulate these. So you can see again, really everything is affecting everything. So both of these emitters are interacting with the geometry, they're both interacting with each other, and they're both interacting with any daemons that we may have placed in the scene. Now, this will probably be the behavior that we would want for most situations, but there may be several instances where maybe we actually want certain objects to only interact with certain other objects. So the way that we do this is with a function called exclusive links. Now, exclusive links are actually sort of tucked away over here on the far left-hand side of your interface. So if I double-click on this exclusive links, that will pull open our exclusive links list. So if we were to, again, look at our global links, this is the listing of everything. And again, the thing to keep in mind is that everything in our global links list affects or is influenced by everything else in our global links. So for example, let's say we wanted this circle emitter to only be influenced by maybe something like the floor. So what I could do is select it in my global links, press delete to remove it. Now, we want to make sure that we only selected the global links, because by selecting it and pressing delete, it'll just remove it out of the global links. Now, if I selected my circle up here in my nodes list and press delete, that's going to remove it entirely from my scene. So just make sure that you do have it selected in the proper place. So now, if I were to reset my simulation, again, Control A, and then A to simulate once again, what we should see is where this circle emitter is now really not being influenced by anything. There's no gravity pulling it down. There's no interaction with any other particles. Nothing whatsoever is affecting it because it's nowhere to be found anywhere in these links. So in order to set up an exclusive link, what we first need to do is take the object that we want to actually do our work on. In this case, it's going to be our circle emitter. And now we start to connect and drop onto this the things that we want to be affected by it, or the things that we want to be influenced. So for example, let's say we want this circle emitter to be influenced or to have its particles interact with the plane. So we take the plane, drop it on top of our circle emitter, and now you can see that we have this little plus icon. So if I expand it, you can see the plane is part of that. Now, if I were to resimulate and let this go through, what we should see is that these particles are now colliding with that floor. But the thing is, you can see that there is actually nothing like gravity. There's no gravity pulling it down. And these particles are actually not interacting at all with any other particles. So this exclusive links does become a little bit more tricky, because now we really have to think about the things that we want to have influenced by these particles, or these things that we want these particles to be influenced by. So we obviously want gravity, so if we were to take our gravity and again drop it right on top of our circle emitter. Now, again, the next time I press enter, you can see now there is gravity pulling it down. We can also maybe tell it to allow it to interact with the square emitter, so we can drop that on there. So now if I let this play through, now you can see these green particles are being influenced by these red particles from our square emitter. So it really just becomes a very, very technical thing now at this point, where we can take certain objects, drop them into our exclusive links, and then make absolutely certain that there are only certain objects or certain daemons that are affecting it. So again, if I were to let this simulation happen for just a little bit longer and pull back, what we should see is that some of these particles will basically start to live forever. So let me let this simulate for just a few more seconds. There we go. Now we can actually start to see where these red particles are actually starting to die because they're being killed by my volume daemon. However, these green particles, you can see, are really not obeying that because our volume daemon is not part of this list of things that is set to influence my circle. So once again, we just need to come in, take my volume daemon, drop it onto my circle, and then let that resimulate. And now you can see that after this simulates for a few frames, that once I play this back, now my volume daemon is part of the things that are influencing this circle emitter. Alright, now here's sort of an interesting thing that you may want to look at, and that is the fact that, again, if you recall, these global links, everything listed in here will affect everything else. Now, once we start to use these exclusive links, things do become a little bit trickier, as you can see. But really, that's not necessarily the end of the story, because we can see we have a situation where, if I were to let this simulate, obviously our circle is being influenced by our square, so you can start to see where this little green particles are starting to sort of fly up because they're being influenced by these red particles. However, if you look very closely, you'll see that these square emitter particles, these red ones, are not being splashed up by the green ones. And that's because, again, we have our square particle emitter listed here in the global links, but if you look, our circle emitter is nowhere to be found, which means that this is not interacting properly. So again, to fix that, we can just take something like our square emitter, drop this in, and we'll go ahead and make sure we don't drop it directly on top of the circle. Now we can put it in here as a new exclusive link, and now we can take our circle and pop it right on top. So now they should both be interacting with each other. If I play this through, there we go. Now we can actually see that both of them are splashing and behaving properly. Now, because I do have my square emitter also located in my global links, we shouldn't have to worry about dropping on things like gravity or my plane or anything like that, because again, these are all part of my global links. So all of these things, because they're listed in here, should already be influencing my square because it's already among this. The only thing missing, obviously, is the circle, so that's where we have to come in and manually make that connection up here. So, like I said, these global and exclusive links, once you start to get using these with a fairly high amount of control, you'll start to see that, again, these things do start to become a little bit more complicated because it does require a little bit of additional thought to actually decide what things need to be influencing what other things. But this can actually be a way of not only helping our simulations improve in their overall speed, because we have things that may not necessarily need to be interacting with each other, and so avoiding those unnecessary calculations can help our simulations proceed much, much faster. And it can also be a way of just getting a certain artistic look. So if we want to influence the behaviors of a particle by using, let's say, maybe a piece of stand-in geometry to affect their behavior or their movement, but we don't want it to affect the behavior and the movement of every one of our particles, this is where we can, again, take advantage of these exclusive links to only link up certain particles to certain objects. And really the same method applies, so if we want to come in and, let's say, maybe remove the influence of something like our square emitter, it's exactly the same process as we were able to use to remove from the global links. Just simply select whatever you want in the exclusive links, press delete, and now it's been taken out of that link list. So now if I restart my simulation, my square emitter should no longer be having any influence on my circle. In other words, the red particles, you can see, are no longer influencing the movement of those green particles. Okay, so that's a look at how we can start to utilize these exclusive links for obtaining a very, very high level of control over our RealFlow simulations.